again, you want to complete your final attempt of the Module 1 assessment before Saturday is over, the end of this week. That means 11:59 p.m. You do want to hit this while the trail is fresh. I would recommend that you go back and have a look at the reconciled items that you submitted for your reconciliation. If you have not completed your reconciliation, now is the time to finish it so that you can review any gaps in understanding or topics, okay? And as we look at Module 2, I have posted another update to the study guide, a draft 0.8. And essentially, there are some assignments in front. Over the weekend, I took stock in where we are and where we'd like to be later in the semester. And it seemed as if some individuals in the class were struggling with the logistics of having a USB that's suitable for this purpose, right? And in order to complete a solution we had planned for this module, students would have to have that ready in order to complete the solution. What we're going to do is assess an option as an alternative for Module 3. So what we'll do is push back the solution we had planned for this module to the next module. And instead, what we'll do is focus on the kinds of resources that you would use to maintain and update your operating systems, to share resources. So if you haven't finished this assignment, I'm going to be scoring credit for this by the end of the week. We have a midterm next week, right? We're going to be engaging the assessment for Module 2 by the beginning of next week. And by the middle of next week, we're going to see where we are and perhaps take a midterm. So you'll want to finish this assignment. We've also reviewed in class and walked through the process where the Microsoft Update website, the Update Catalog, is a useful reference. It's a useful resource for anybody who is working deployment and maintenance for operating systems. And so there's a very simple activity that you can complete to log additional credit for Module 2. And essentially, you're going to perform the same steps we demonstrated in class. So once again, if you have faced challenges completing the 2.1 assignment at this point, you need to pull out all the stops and make sure that you finish that up by the end of this week. And if you're having logistical issues that you don't think are likely to, if you don't think a little more time is going to help, you need to send me an email and state that you need some other manner of assistance to have this resource to perform those tasks. Okay. And then we'll take it from there. I want to share with you that there's a slight difference between those of you that have Windows 10 machines and those of you that have Windows 11 machines on the 2.2 assignment. Do any of you now work with a system that has Windows 10 as opposed to Windows 11? Hello? Do all of you have Windows 11?
Yeah, I have Windows 11.
Okay.
I also have Windows 11.
Okay, so who said that first?
Kevin.
Kevin and Kyrick have Windows 11. James,
James.
do you have Windows 11?
Yes.
I think last time we established like probably one or maybe two
Windows,
people had.
I have Windows 10.
Yeah.
Okay.
See?
Okay. So if you have Windows 10, you have to determine, for those of you that have Windows 10, you have to determine which version of Windows 10 you're running with. And it's most likely 22H2, but in case you're running with an older install, sometimes those get stuck and they don't upgrade to 22H2 and they're back into 21H2 or 20H2. You find out what that is by going to your start menu and going to settings and then choosing system and then selecting about. And if you scroll down in Windows 10, it'll show you if you're on 22H2 or 21H2 or 20H2. And that's an important distinction. For this exercise, when you click this link, it will open up the Microsoft Update Catalog for the latest cumulative update for the different versions of Windows 10. And very few students anymore have 32-bit devices or are running Windows 10 on a RISC processor-based machine. So what you would want to do is identify, is it 20H2 or is it 21H2 or is it 22H2? You're going to want to download the cumulative update, avoid the dynamic cumulative. Download the cumulative update for your relevant version of Windows and use the x64 based option. So in this case, if I had a 22H2, I would walk over to this download and click download and then finish the exercise. Any questions? For Windows 11, let's see here. That should have opened up. That should have opened up into a separate window, but what it did instead is, because it's a single 64-bit download for the 22H version of Windows 11, it's going to start the download in your browser. You can see here. So instead of having a screen pop up, that's the actual link for the MSU. On the Windows 10 page, if you were to pick the 22H2x64 based version here, and then click download, a second window would pop up and you'd have to click again, and it's different for each version. So, I tried to keep it easy for everybody, but for Windows 10 users, there's a couple of extra steps. Any questions for the 2.2 assignment? Does anyone have any questions?
Oh, so that was already just download this? That's great. I already have that downloaded. I guess I did the wrong thing for one.
Well, if you were following along in class, you might actually have it downloaded, but you want to make sure it's the correct one.
The cumulative, right?
Yeah, the cumulative for February,
Yeah.
and it's 22H2, and it's a specific knowledge base article, KB 502. It shows at the bottom. So when we open this up in Explorer, File Explorer, and it's still downloading. Takes a while. And that's one of the reasons why we're doing this. This might be it right here. I did that earlier, I think. This is probably a different download. Let's see. 502, 2360, 2404. If I'm looking at this, no, yeah, it's a different one. 2845. Okay. So you can see here that it's going to take me about 10 minutes. And this is actually a pretty large, if I open the downloads page, it's actually 278 megabytes. Now, one of the things that we need to be able to perform, most students in class were able to complete the solution for Module 1. In Module 1, you created a virtual machine. You installed and configured a virtual machine for Module 1. What you're going to do is use that virtual machine to complete the solution in Module 2. The intent of the solution in Module 2 is to show you how you can set up resources when you're working OS installs or updates on a single machine. There's a video, and you simply click the link and follow the steps. Now, it may reference a different number for the solution. The screenshots you post provide an artifact you completed each step. So if you complete each step, it'll show that it'll show what it is and how it is you're doing. Now, one of the things that you want to do when you're setting up a resource for operating system deployment or maintenance is that you want to make it easy for people to find the resource. And there's an interesting trick here. It says first connect your virtual machine and clear the first window that appears. Paste a screenshot with final results into a Word document, right? And then it says open the hosts file in Notepad. And remember to change the file type to any and all to see the etc directory. This is all covered in the video, and I'm going to make sure this is still working. So today we're going to walk through the solution for Module 2. We had problems with
for just $67.
All right, so instead of using the remote system, you're going to use your own system. Instead of using the remote system. So when you watch this, what you'll see, let me get through this.
You can make as many videos as you want, and you never need to pick up a camera. And we're live, according to you.
What happened here? Okay, must have clicked link. Yeah, it changed the due date. The due date has changed now. You can skip that part. This is where we talk about the etc file. Are you with me?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to click on this directory and hit the S key. So instead of performing the steps on a remote machine, you'll perform the steps on your own virtual machine, your own virtual server. And you're going to go ahead and complete the tasks, each one listed. And this is one thing that we want to share with folks that's actually an insider trick or tip. So I have a local work group. And what I'm going to do now is show you the name of my local work group here. And if I go to my computer name, and here it has my name, and I can go to advanced system settings. I have a work group called the Fifth Element. Can everybody see that?
Yeah, can see it. Work group fifth element.
Okay. So what we're going to walk through and explain are the steps that'll be different when you use your own machine to complete these tasks. So I've decided to name my computer Zorg, right? The laptop that I have now. And I'm gonna give my virtual machine another name. I don't know if you're familiar with the movie The Fifth Element, but I'll use a character from The Fifth Element. Lilu, the star of the show, right? The star of the movie, the heroine. And I'll make the server a member of the same work group. You see in all caps, Fifth Element, right? So in fact, I'll tell you what, I'm going to change the link. We'll walk through this together and do all of this now in class. And then you'll just play back this video. So if you start your VM, and I have this machine saved right now. I was working on it before. I'm going to go ahead and run it with detachable start because I'm running on a laptop, and if something happens to the power and the power save mode goes into effect, I don't want weirdness to hit this thing. So if I just run it otherwise, now if you're running on a PC or a server, that option isn't as critical. So can everybody see the screen here? My server is restoring. And essentially, it had installed an update. And this thing was running. And it says, getting Windows ready, don't turn off your computer. And so instead of turning off my computer, I saved it. I used a little virtual machine magic. So when you're using VirtualBox, if you close this, one cheat or workaround, if it's time for you to catch your shuttle or your ride back home, and you can't sit there and wait for Windows to finish loading your virtual machine, when you hit this and close this, can everybody see the pop-up window that's appeared on my screen?
Yes.
Yep.
So you can power off the machine, and that would chop it off. That would be like pulling the plug out of the wall. That would be a bad thing if it's in the middle of updates. You can try to send the shutdown signal. That's like hitting Control-Alt-Delete or fast pressing the power button to tell the computer, hey, I need you to wrap this up and get out of here. I often use the save machine state option because, well, it lets me halt whatever we're doing. It's like freezing time. And then I can come back to it and it can finish the process without ruining the machine. So it's an important safety tip that's useful to share. I couldn't continue running it in the background. If I had done that and closed the lid and my laptop went to sleep, there would be no background running. It would all be dormant, right? So that's the option. Usually takes about 15 to 20 seconds, about as much time as you saw it resume, to save the machine state. That means the contents of the active RAM, everything it was processing, down to the last bit and byte, is just frozen in time. Okay. Now, it does happen occasionally on physical servers, on virtual machines, on laptops and PCs. You get to the point where you've been waiting for something to clear and it just doesn't want to clear. It's like there's no swirly window, there's no status percentage. It's just sort of hung. And when that occurs, it is safe to go ahead and close the machine. And what you want to do first is try to send the shutdown signal. What you're doing is inputting with the keyboard, the Control-Alt-Delete. So that's another way to trigger this. You input Control-Alt-Delete, and if the pop-up window appears, you can select shutdown, right? But you can see this is unresponsive. So this is a problem. Up, up. Don't you know it? Everybody can see this, right?
Yeah.
Do you think machines listen to us? I'm just asking the question. I was ready to pull the plug out of the wall. And now, what's the takeaway from this scenario? It pays big dividends. Well, it pays big dividends to be patient. You want to try progressive measures one at a time, and you don't want to be in a hurry, because if files are being updated and they're interrupted, you can get scrambled eggs, right? And then you have a VM that's not so stable. This is true for physical machines as well. And if you're deploying an OS, you're going to see a lot of this, especially during updates. Now, I have spent quality time in our class this semester saying over and over again that it's important to run updates and to download the MSU files separately, because that's going to be an important part of the stability of your operating system. And in particular, if you download those updates in advance, you can either store them in a separate folder and share it, so you can flash load those updates locally instead of downloading from the internet. Or you can open up the update with a tool. You can download another form of the update, and then using a tool, you can incorporate that update into the install media. So if you have an ISO to install the operating system, it's called Slipstream. Everybody, say that word, Slipstream.
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 Slipstream, yep, Slipstream. When you slipstream updates, you're taking the core ISO, you're taking the basic ISO, and let's see, in here, you're basically opening up the ISO as if it were a disk, and you're running a utility called DISM. Almost sounds like dizzy, DISM. It has to do with the install maintenance, right? It's a utility to help inject, and that means it's already in the operating system, right? So you don't have to do it. And that's huge. So updates are always a headache because they take so long. But ultimately, that's an important part of stability for an operating system. So now I'm at a point where I have a functional operating system, and I ran into a hiccup, and you've observed how I manage that hiccup. This is the same thing that you want to do for your system. Now, if I go to input here, I hate it when this happens. Nope, that's not it. Let's try this. Does this ever happen to you? By the way, there are ways to reset the password, manual ways to physically force a change in the password. So it's a pretty well documented password reset method for the root or admin account. If anyone's interested in watching that being done and performing it on your system, you know, you can recover that password and then you don't have to reload it from scratch. So let's go back to our screen here. It says, first connect to your virtual machine and clear the first window that appears. Paste a screenshot of the final results into a Word document for your submission. Now, I want to check something here on my server. This is the opening screen of my server. And I want to look and see where I am. Am I in the same work group as my laptop?
No.
I'm not. And it looks like I have something assigned by DHCP. I'd like to know if I'm on the same network. I want to know if I'm bridged. If I see something in here, I might not be bridged. So I'm on 192.168.1.6. And if I check my machine settings, I should be bridged. And I am bridged, okay. So I'm drawing the network. Technically speaking, if I want my machine to be a resource for others, I should be in the same work group. Now, normally the default work group is called what, everyone? Work group. The default work group name, if you don't set it to something else, is called work group. What I want to do is establish a fixed computer name, and I want my computer to have a stable IP address in the same work group where I'm sharing resources. So if I'm using my own computer as an example, if you have a gibberish name for your system, it's time to name your system something. And if you have the name work group for work group, it's time to name it something else. And why am I telling you you should do this? Well, if you want to deploy operating systems and maintain them, and you don't want people in your Kool-Aid all the time, any system that you have that's part of the default work group called work group, all they have to do is connect to your network, and they're in the same work group. Let me say that again. All they have to do is connect to your network, and they're in the same work group, because their work group name is work group, and your work group name is work group. And that means they can start doing weird things, then start browsing the network using File Explorer. This is an option that most people don't even think about, but it's serious business down here. So if you're in the same work group and you start browsing, you can start seeing other devices that are in the same work group. Well, all right, so I'm Fifth Element. I'm going to put the name Lilu in here. And then I'm going to reboot my system. Not my laptop, my virtual machine. My virtual machine name is Goku, and it's a member of the anime work group. Well, I did that before to demonstrate how easy it is to improve the security of your system. and this is something you ought to seriously consider. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to change this. I'll click on the anime work group. I'll change it. I'll say the work group name is what? Fifth element. Everybody sees this, yeah? And the computer name is LILU for Lilu. By the way, if you've never seen the Fifth Element, it's kind of a cult classic. It's an amazing movie. And it's hilarious, but there's a lot of action. And it's set in the future, 23rd century. And the French version of Steven Spielberg is the one who directed it. It's really amazing. Bruce Willis is also a star. That's just something I care to share. All right, so I'm going to do this. What's going to happen when I change the name? It's going to say, welcome to the Fifth Element work group. And it's going to say, oh, I got to restart my computer before these changes apply. Well, now that I've done this, I should be able to restart. So you want to paste a screenshot with the final results into a Word document. But before you clear that first window, you want to make sure that it's in the same work group and you have a sensible name for your laptop and your virtual machine. Is everybody with me?
Repeat that one more time.
Before you start the first steps of your solution, you are going to want to finish changing the name of your virtual machine server to something sensible, and you want to join the same work group that is set up on your host. And if your host is the work group, you should change it. You shouldn't wait. Okay. So once again, the goal is to make it easy to share resources. So we're going to give our server the name of our host. And we're going to do this on other machines. We're going to use the hosts system in Notepad. The hosts file in your virtual server is a bit like DNS. So what you can do is make things simple. For example, what is the name of my machine? I just showed it to you. What is the name of my host machine?
Zorg.
Zorg. Right? Now, when I'm trying to connect to resources on my network, do I want to remember 192.168.1. What was it now? Which IP address now? Right? Gets to be a pain, doesn't it? Okay. What I want to do is refer to it by name. That's what we're setting up here in the first part of our solution. Now, if we run out of time, and I can't take this very much further, what we'll do is hit the pause button, and then I'll go ahead and finish the walkthrough, and then post a part 2 where you can link into that from the solution. But this is something you need to get started doing today. And I do not want to hear you can't do it if you've already submitted for the first solution because you have a virtual machine. Everybody should be good to go, right? So I have a work group called Fifth Element. My device name is Zorg. And more importantly, when I look at my network and I want to find out what network address I have, I can go to my Wi-Fi and then look at Jordan properties. And then it'll tell me what my address is. I'm sitting on 192.168.1.4. That is the address for Zorg. The address for Lilu is what? What did you see just a moment ago? Anybody remember? Yes, no, maybe? Nobody remembers. It's close. 192. You know the first ones, right? 192.168
dot
one dot something.
I think it was something. Yeah, really, I can't
Six.
remember.
6. This is
Okay.
why we use names. Do you or do you not have a favorite movie, a favorite music group with the names of the musicians you know, right? Don't you have a familiar group, a familiar place, a familiar team with their sports stars, their heroes, right? Everybody has that, don't they? Wouldn't it be nice? Wouldn't it be nice? I'm just saying. It would be pretty darn nice if you didn't have to depend on weird stuff. Fifth element, there it is. Lilu, fifth element. And if I look at my DHCP, it's .6. I can verify that it's .6. So I double click this, and I look in here, my details, and I'm still sitting on .6, okay? Now, for my Wi-Fi router, my systems are usually assigned an IP address for a comfortable length of time, so they don't change very often. If you want to make this resilient, you would set up a static address, and you could do that where you could use a network address that isn't being used by the automatic assignment range, and then it never changes, but everybody knows how to get to it by name, right? So what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to close this screen, and then I'm going to open up Notepad, but I'm not going to open up Notepad. I'm not going to open up Notepad in normal fashion. I'm going to do it this way. Is everybody with me? I'm going to right click this and run it as an administrator. Can everyone see what I just did there? It's flashing a bit, but you can see that I run as administrator.
Yes.
Okay. So it should come up, run as administrator. And there we have it. Now, why am I running as administrator? If you're accessing the hosts file, it won't allow you to save the changes that we're about to make so that you can reference the other machine by name. So I'm going to go ahead. We're almost done, by the way. We only need another minute or two, and then we'll take a break. So I'm going to go ahead and open. When I open, I'm going to navigate to the C drive, to Windows, to System 32. And then I'm going to go to a file named let's see here. Was it Etsy? The Etsy directory. Okay. So inside the drivers folder. So this is counterintuitive, but I want you to think of network names as a kind of like the names on a road sign, right? So you have easier driving when you have names. If you go into drivers and then go into the etc folder, Etsy, and then change this so that it shows all files, all of a sudden there's a host's name that appears. You're going to double click that. Now, this is something that functions a bit like DNS, and it's an insider secret. But one of the cool things is that I can take this example here and I can remark it out. I can take out the remark by removing the pound sign. So if there's a pound sign in front of the line, it's just a comment. I'm going to replace this with 192.168.1.1. one dot, now I'm on Lilu and I want to touch Zorg. So I'm going to put .4, and then I'm going to put Zorg. And I'm going to put fifth element. And just for kicks, I'll put .net. One other cool thing you can do with the name in a computer is you can add a DNS suffix. So you can take that workgroup name like fifth element, and you can associate it with a regular domain name, even though it's not in an Active Directory domain. Let me show you what I'm talking about. If I go into here, go into settings, and then go into system and about, and then go to advanced system settings. When I go to computer name, I can add what's called a DNS suffix. So I can click change, and the workgroup name is fifth element, but I can click more and then add a DNS suffix like fifth dash element .net. And I'll hit OK, and then OK. And then it says, oh, I got to restart my system. Well, we'll do that afterwards. I just want you to see how this would work, okay? I'm going to close this. I'm not going to restart now. I'm going to restart later. So now I have an entry. I can take this out, but I'm going to say this is the host, right? So I'm going to remark this out with another pound sign or a hashtag. I'm going to say this is the host system. And I'm also going to add one more entry. I'm going to duplicate this. So I'm going to copy this same line. And I'm also going to include a plain name, Zorg. Okay? Everybody with me? Now, I also want to include my own name. So I want to have a reference in here for Lilu, so I can refer to Lilu or Zorg just by Lilu or Zorg when I'm setting up network resources. So I'm going to set up two duplicate lines, and then I'm going to save this. Let's do that. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate that. Any questions so far? Make this 6 and 6. I'll say Lilu. And this is the VM server. And here's the VM server. Now, I'm going to go ahead and save this file. And now I'm going to flush the DNS cache. So I'm going to open up a command prompt and run it as administrator. Can everyone see my screen? We're like 30 seconds away from being done.
Yes, sir.
ipconfig flush DNS. So I'm going to tell the local DNS cache, hey, whatever you knew before, just dump it. And now what I want to do is I want to ping Zorg. Ah, it knows who Zorg is. I wonder if it knows who Lilu is. Oh, yeah. Well, it's replying with IPv6. So with Lilu, I probably need to disable IPv6. That's what you're seeing right there. All right, at this point, we'll pause and then I will complete the rest of the walkthrough for the solution. So this will be called part 1 of our solution walkthrough. And then I'll finish recording on part 2. We'll post with the solution. We'll pick up the rest of our content review for module 2 on Wednesday. Please get started, refresh your virtual machine, run any updates you need to. Or what you could do, well, no, yeah, since it's a server, you won't be using the same operating system. I was going to say, once you learn how to share resources, you could post what you need to update it with MSUs and just double click them. We'll do that later. Any questions before we close today for this session?
Not right now, no. But do you have a session or class after this one?
I do. I have one
Okay.
starting. I have one starting right away until 4 o'clock.
Can we meet up for 4 o'clock then? If that's okay with
Possibly.
you.
Yeah, possibly. What you want to do is join the Zoom session right at 4 o'clock, and then as the others clear, you can ask away.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so what I'm going to do in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and restart my system. I'm going to say that it's a planned restart because I made this change, and I'll click continue, and it'll be ready for the next class. All right. We'll stop sharing and stop recording.